Hello and welcome to this special BW Education Dialogue. Today, I'm joined by Professor Nirmala Rao, who's the Vice Chancellor of Krea University, and Mr. Raghav Gupta, who's the Managing Director, India and Asia Pacific region for Coursera. Now, through this dialogue, we'll explore some recent trends in online learning at universities. Of course, Professor Nirmala will share with us her thoughts on how she's addressing it, what philosophy on this is, and then on the other hand, of course, how Coursera is helping universities and campuses to adapt all of this. Raghav will brief us on that. We'll try to keep this conversation. Professor Nirmala, my first question to you, as a leader with vast global experience, how are you driving academic excellence for students at Krea University?
I don't know about vast global experience. Thank you very much for the very generous introduction. But yes, I've had over nearly 3 decades of experience at UK higher education institutions, predominantly in University of London, and 2 of those colleges. And then I served for 5 years as Vice Chancellor at the Asian University for Women in Bangladesh. Now, the very different worlds. And Krea, of course, is a different world. And there is some similarity between Krea and my previous institution in Bangladesh because they are very new, young. Krea is in 5th year. When I joined AUW, it was in its 8th year. So there are a lot of parallels compared with the 100-year-old institutions at the University of London. Now, how are one to drive academic excellence? At Krea, any institution is only as good as the people it has. So my first priority is to get high quality faculty recruited, retained, have solid retention strategies, and staff, of course, and the very best of faculty, staff, and students. So that's the first point I just want to say in academic excellence. And of course, that's followed by the kind of programs we offer, this kind of skills that we deliver, and provide for a transformative student experience. Now, what do we mean by that? Programs, Krea has the advantage in that it's the only liberal arts institution in south of India. And we do try and distinguish ourselves in that space of liberal arts by focusing on what we term the interwoven liberal arts, which is very different to a liberal arts model, which is just providing the breadth in the first year and then the depth in the second and third year. That's a liberal arts model, which is gaining currency in India, still at its infancy. Now, the interwoven concept of liberal arts is not simply allowing students to take the breadth and the depth, but it focuses on the breadth in a very similar way. But in terms of the depth in the second, third, and fourth year, we have team-taught courses, for example. So students don't have to go to different departments to learn about the same phenomenon. They get multiple perspectives in one place at one lecture through team-taught. We recruit faculty who are not just confined to one discipline, but can straddle beyond boundaries of their own discipline. We engage students to participate in research projects with faculty and with their peers across the disciplines. So there's a lot of cross-listing. So even if you're to do a major in physics, you'll be doing electives, cross-listed of courses in, say, data analytics, or even as far as in politics and philosophy and so on. So the programs are very innovative, very novel. And so that is the only challenge is how do we deliver and maintain the quality and, get into that space of that limited market. But apart from the programs and the skills, of course, the student experience, we have a very, very beautiful campus to begin with. Students get an all-round experience. But what really drives excellence, and which is what we're trying to focus, is what do the students get in their journey of that 3 or 4 year period. So we focus very much on giving them the best packages and internships during the second year, third year summer placements. And we also have a very strong career services department that makes sure that we are working with the industry for placements at the end of their final year. In so doing, of course, we got to make sure that the programs are aligned with the demands out there, which is always, of course, I'm sure you want to explore that, but that is an area which is always very difficult because industry demands are changing rapidly. Academia, by the time you put a program and you're implementing it, the demands, goalposts of the universities have shifted, if you see what I mean. That is a problem, not just for Krea, but it's a problem for any university, I would say, to come together. So I think, good internships, good summer placements, which is a package that we give them and make sure that we maintain excellence. And of course, we are now in our 4th year. We are submitting ourselves for accreditation by NAC, which will be another insurance of our quality and standards.
Right. So, Professor Rao, you clearly mentioned in your answer that one of the biggest challenges that remains is that consistency in delivery, right? Mm-hmm. Now, given the landscape, the way the education landscape has changed in these 3 years, if you could elaborate more on as to what are some of the challenges that your institution face right now. Of course, you mentioned delivery, but apart from that, given the changes that we have seen in these 3 years, if you could elaborate on that.
In India or globally?
In India, of course.
Yeah. I think there's also a global trend which India is responding to. That's why I want to draw the distinction, of course. Okay. Because India is also positioning itself in terms of how do you sustain that academic excellence in terms of, positioning in terms of attaining a good ranking in the league table. So you got to actually be comparable to other cutting edge institutions to be competitive. But I think in a world that is transforming itself, and by that I mean it's become much more technologically driven, much more access to online, particularly post-pandemic, where technology has really taken, quite apart from AI and machine learning, I'm talking about even the simple online. We've learned so much in those 2 years. It's been humbling. And now we are in a much better position than we were pre-pandemic. Everybody's become tech savvy. We all want to use the opportunities that online learning has given us to reach a wider scope, audience. But we have a problem in a place like Krea because our focus is much more on if you see the liberal arts tradition and sciences, liberal arts and sciences tradition, it's much more than simply saying it's how do you gear yourself with the getting them aligned with the skills that are required for online, digital, if you like, space. Now, we equip students, regardless of what we are doing otherwise, we equip them with the skills such as digital literacy, problem solving, critical thinking, so that they become successful in their future career paths. And our curriculum is built in such a way.
Dr. Rao, we have some hindrance on your camera. See you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, we build these skills in the first year, when we are giving them the breadth. The critical thinking, power of reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and so on. They are built in such a way that they become the first year. They get to learn data analytics, programming skills, and so on, which form the foundation of what you call the digital literacy. And that's where the transformation is taking place. And emerging career paths, we know that they're ranging from, preservation of the environment to healthcare, informatics. Wherever you take, they require the analysis of big data. So the big data, AI, they're getting a solid grounding in those skills right from the start, so that they're set to thrive. Now, we are also introducing a 4-year data science program, which is now the data science is the fastest growing career in the world. And we are introducing that, which is the foundation we know for a number of industry, whether it's healthcare, whether it is retail or banking or finance, all these areas. And we're also equipping our students with a multitude of skills, ranging from advanced programming like Python and SQL to statistical learning, mathematics. So there's a lot of emphasis on the what we call preparing them for that kind of transformation. And I see very much the direction in which it's going. But I'll come to the point about, is that adequate? I'm sure we'll have that discussion.
Right.
I have a special take on that.
Okay, for sure. Raghav, I'll bring you in at this point in time. We talked about the landscape that it has changed in these 3 years. But again, if I were to ask you, in this environment of disruption and rapid change, where do you see academic leaders focused on in terms of their key strategic goals?
So I think the context has changed a little bit, Arjun. I'm not sure if the 4 strategic goals or the key strategic goals of academic leaders have changed that much. And let me explain what I mean by that, right? In my role at Coursera, we work with many leading universities in the country, in Southeast Asia, and so on. And most academic leaders would say, look, I'm focused on strengthening academic excellence at my institution. I want to drive student employability and placements. I want to grow our rankings and our brand perception. And finally, I want to grow our student enrollments and revenue. These are broadly the 4, strategic goals that we hear. The only difference here has been that the importance of student employability and placement, if anything, post-pandemic has gone up because industry has changed very quickly. But the context within these 4 buckets is slightly different, and let me explain that as well. And I'll echo what Professor Rao said, right, that industry has changed very rapidly post-pandemic, during the pandemic. 91% of CEOs in India have said we are more digital as a company than we were pre-pandemic. And all of us as consumers of many of these services would have experienced that, right? But what that means for a student in a college today is that irrespective of what you're studying, you need to have certain understanding of technology. You need to have certain understanding of data. You might be either needing literacy levels of knowledge, or you might be needing practitioner levels of knowledge, depending on the kind of career you want to pursue. But digital technology and data are all pervasive. The other element that CHROs and companies will tell you is that the need for human skills and leadership skills has actually gone up manyfold. Leaders are the ones in companies who are helping employees navigate periods of rapid change. And COVID, then digitization, then end of last year, ChatGPT, generative AI is bringing in a lot of change. And so the need for human skills and leadership skills has gone up. And in that context, what we are seeing is that when we talk about strengthening academic excellence, that's where the context has changed, right? When I went to business school and I went to INSEAD, 95% of what I learned was from faculty of INSEAD, and 5%, 10% was from visiting faculty. But today, what a lot of leading universities are doing, and we work quite closely with Symbiosis and with Shiv Nadar University and other leading universities, they're saying, look, the model is no longer about my faculty teaching my students, but today it opens up the access to the world, best quality faculty members, best institutions to come in and teach our students. So today, even regulation in the country says, look, up to 40% of what a student on campus is learning can come from an online platform. And I think the underlying thesis in all of this is that the model of higher education is no longer limited to faculty within an institution. But, to Professor Rao's point, at Symbiosis, a faculty member is teaching data analytics, but leveraging content from Johns Hopkins University to complement what a student might be learning. So I think that's one thing which I think has changed. The other thing which has changed quite significantly is we are seeing industry become an important educator as well. And I don't mean to the extent of collaboration in physical labs, but to the extent of industry coming in and saying, look, if everybody needs to have some understanding of data and technology and so on and so forth, we are seeing many organizations are saying, look, if you have an undergrad, you've specialized in digital marketing, but along with your high quality degree, if you've also studied social media marketing from Facebook, if you've also studied search engine optimization from Google, what is now called an industry micro credential, there is a lot of value in that. And this goes back to my second point of the strategic goal is driving student employability and placements. And we created something that we call a career academy about 6-8 months ago. And what we've done is we've taken 36 industry micro credentials, which are meant for high in demand digital jobs, which can be learned online. And now there is industry micro credentials in the areas of data, in the areas of business, in the areas of sales and marketing, in the areas of software, and so on. And companies like Google and IBM and Facebook and Salesforce are teaching these industry micro credentials. And students who are graduating with a combination of a high quality degree and an industry micro credential are seeing that that gives them a strong starting point in their careers, in their first placements and so on.
I think
So if I were to summarize, strengthening academic excellence is not new, but how one approaches it, there are new dimensions which are now available. Student employability has probably seen a spike in terms of amount of importance to it. And industry micro credentials, possibly with something like a career academy on Coursera, seems to be complementing quite a bit of what campuses are providing their students.
I think, Raghav, if I just make a point about accessing this online resources, which is fantastic, because you have this repository of wealth of information there, which you can download and supplement. What we are also doing, I don't know how many universities are actually getting into that space of making that a priority or giving that importance. But what we are also doing here is actually within the subfields of a discipline where we don't have adequate faculty to teach, we call on visiting faculty with the expertise. But we are also substituting that, complementing that with developing partnerships with overseas institutions. So we have partnerships with Carnegie, we have with Johns Hopkins, and we have King's College. So where we are lacking, we are able to draw upon their courses to actually fill that gap, if you like, in the benchmarking of a discipline. Yeah. Just as a supplement to online, because students still want that kind of interaction on a face-to-face interaction being delivered by the traditional method. And I don't think we can wish that away. And what we also have, talking about your point with how do you align with industry, we have professors of practice who can provide for industry synchronized coursework, and because they come with many years of strong trajectory of having worked in the industry, whether they're in art or in banking or finance or whatever. So I think these are also as a package to be seen along with.
Absolutely.
Raghav, a follow-up question. Clearly some takeaways for me from your answer were the keywords: digital, data, technology, and then of course you mentioned ChatGPT. Now, we recently heard a lot of announcements coming from the Coursera conference, especially about ChatGPT and the power of these tools in making education more interactive, teaching more effective. How do you see these new launches and how they're going to transform India's education landscape?
Yeah, it's very exciting, Arjun. We've done a couple of things that I can highlight, right? And this goes back to Professor Rao's point as well. Look, you go to YouTube, you watch something, you are learning, but it's passive, right? You're largely listening to what is the video. You come to a regular Coursera course, you're watching a professor from University of London, University of Michigan teaching online, but it is async. But I can go to a discussion forum, I will be asked a bunch of questions in an assessment or a quiz. So that passive learning shifts to being active. What we've announced at our annual conference a week before last is a ChatGPT powered Coursera coach. What that does is it puts the power of ChatGPT into every single learner's hands. And as I'm learning a course on Coursera, which is asynchronous, I can interact with this personalized coach. I can ask questions, I can clarify doubts, I can go beyond the material of the course. I can ask the ChatGPT powered coach to summarize the materials as well. And what we've done away with is, the risk with ChatGPT is when it's crawling the wide internet, sometimes the answers that it throws up are not reliable. What we've done is we've grounded ChatGPT in the content on the Coursera platform. And on Coursera, there are close to 200 of the world's top universities and 100 companies who author content. And there are thousands of courses, as one could imagine. So what ChatGPT does is it goes into this expert content, if you will, and then comes back with answers grounded in expert content. And so we are hoping that we would have progressed from passive to active to what we would call personalized and interactive learning, so that the element of, look, this is not engaging enough, can get addressed in a big way. The other thing that we've done is we've given a very powerful tool to faculty members as well, and we are calling it Course Builder. Now, to create content, to create syllabi, to create curricula is a very time-consuming, hard work that faculty members do. And we've said, look, in today's world where now ChatGPT is available to create and author content, you can author assessments. How do we again ground this content creation in expert content? So on Course Builder on Coursera, a faculty member can come in and say, look, here's the course I'm teaching. Here, write me the syllabus, right? So you're teaching data structures, ChatGPT will write up the structure. And then it'll offer you the option to say, look, do you want to create your own content? Or do you also want to borrow from existing content that might be available again from top universities and companies? And I've seen this demo live, and within a few hours, you can actually get a high quality piece of content created, which then you can refine as a leading, instructor in your field, which you can then refine. So Coach and Course Builder for the learner and for faculty is something that we've announced. Early responses are very, very promising, and our strong sense is that this will really revolutionize a lot of what we are bringing to learners as well as faculty members around the world and in the country as well.
Right.
I think Raghav has made a very good point and very good illustrative of ChatGPT. I mean, there's no doubt that the new business models are disrupting the traditional educational institutions and the operating models, if you like, and a very good example. But I must say, Raghav, I myself was very skeptical of ChatGPT. And when we got all these complaints that, a lot of essays were straight out of ChatGPT, right, immediately my response was to introduce a traditional 3-hour exam. And, that's 100% foolproof, right? And but we had a recent session on ChatGPT, which is very informative, to actually examine how one could use it to, for the benefit for all, and to be aware of its potential, its limitations, and its abuse. And I think it opens up a world of opportunities, as you were rightly saying. And we would love to work with Coursera to see how we might actually improve.
I would love to show you these two, and I'm not going to go into all the others that we've announced for the moment. But I think, like you said, Professor, how do you do away with the stuff which is not going to be helpful in an academic environment? And I completely see the logic of saying, look, a 3-hour on-campus exam, because you want to be able to test knowledge and you want to be able to assess it.
Under pressure.
How do you couple it with the power of ChatGPT in the learning itself? And I think, I think it can be a good win-win to bring the best and keep the worst out.
Absolutely.
Right. So, Dr. Rao, if I have to shift my focus now towards, delivering industry-aligned topics. Now, one of the key challenges that universities face is developing and delivering courses in industry-aligned topics. Now, how are you addressing this at the Krea University?
Yeah, I mean, I just go back to what I said. One of the ways in which we're doing the liberal arts and sciences, first of all, we all know that the industry has certain requirements, and it's increasingly shifting towards, every graduate they're employing should be equipped with, the basic data analysis skills and so on. So we have compulsory courses in the first year. They all have to do data analysis and programming, and then you build on that at an advanced level. Like I said, we introduced the 4-year degree program in data science, which will equip you with all the right skills that the industry today wants. And what we also are trying to do is draw upon our business school, which has been in existence over 25 years, draw upon their expertise to offer undergraduate courses in marketing and business studies, accounting, finance, bring their skills into our courses and embed them. So we're redesigning the curricula to actually incorporate from what we have, which is the least most cost-effective and least expensive method of doing it. And industry aligned, of course, when we send our students on, we have a very smart internship programs with all the top industries, and our board members help us to get connected with, the top businesses. And they come back and actually they tell us what's lacking or what we need to do. And students are driving to some extent, giving very good inputs into how we might actually address. And that's very important. And I'm thinking going forward really is to also have employers on our, when we are designing curriculum, which is what we did in the University of London years ago, where they would sit on the program review committees and see how, and have their input in what kind of skills they are looking for and whether we are embedding them in the curriculum, and also invite them to be on the interview panels when we're recruiting faculty. So, and I said about the professors of practice, we have quite a few across the board who are bringing that industry experience and industry aligned courses and developing.
Right. Raghav, you mentioned industry as educator, and especially with micro credentials for entry-level jobs. Could you elaborate more into this area and talk about why it is important and how Coursera is enabling this for universities?
So as context, Arjun, there are about 120 million people around the world who come to Coursera. About 20 million of them are in India. Based on the objectives that these learners are looking for, we segment them into 4 groups: career starters, career advancers, career switchers, and enthusiasts, right? And the definitions are self-explanatory. Students in campuses are, of course, career starters. 2 years ago, we'd done a bit of work with McKinsey, and we'd said, look, which are those high in demand jobs, which are, based in technology and data, which can be learned online and are exciting for students who are going to be in campuses. So which are those exciting jobs for career starters? And McKinsey had come up with a list of 75 such jobs, 75, right? And Professor Rao spoke about this as well. Data analytics, data analysts are so much high in demand, right? I work with CEOs and they'll tell me, look, digital marketing is a big skill that we need, and so on and so forth. So this has many of these obvious candidates. Of those 75 in-demand job roles, we have so far created industry micro-credentials for 36 of them. And now we are working on filling the rest of these from, again, top companies. That was one thing that we did. Second thing that we did was a few months ago, we went out and interviewed about 3,000 students and about 1,200 employers in 10 countries, including India. And one of the questions we asked the students was, look, along with your campus while you're studying, for your degree, would you see value in an industry micro-credential being offered by your campus as a part of the learning experience on campus? And an overwhelming, some 90-95% students said, yes, this makes a lot of sense. We would want to go to an institution where an industry micro-credential is offered. And we see that we will succeed in our careers if we would have, taken an industry micro-credential. And one would imagine this is, now very logical, because I'm doing, business studies. I want to work as a digital marketer. If I also have a certificate from Meta saying I've done social media marketing, then it strengthens my profile. And then we also ask the employers, do you see value in speaking to a student who, along with a degree, has an industry micro-credential? And again, similar answers, it makes a lot of sense. So that survey kind of, emphasized the hypothesis that we had, that this makes sense. And the third thing which we've done 2 weeks ago is we were hearing from industry that industry is increasingly thinking about skills first hiring. How do you look at a student, their overall personality, which institution they're coming from, but also what are the skills that they possess? And to be able to do skills first hiring for companies, we've recently launched something called Coursera Hiring Solutions. And what we've done as a part of that is, if you're learning on campus and also online, can we measure the skills that you're learning? Can we translate the language of learning, different subjects into skills? And then because there are lakhs of students who come to Coursera, can we benchmark those skills to say, look, in the area of data analyst, you need to have 6 underlying skills. On those 6 underlying skills, this is your proficiency level as compared to lakhs of students in the country. And now we can make that visible to an employer per se, right? So an employer can, along with thinking about the campus, they can think about the skills of a student and then hopefully reach out to the right students who match the skills that they're looking for under the broader theme of skills first hiring. So these hopefully are going to be, quite value creating for both institutions, employers, and eventually for students on campuses as well.
Right. And one more thing that I would like your views on is the, recent changes to government regulations where, universities can now offer 40% of credits in any category through online courses. How are you working with campuses in India to deliver this and the impact you're seeing in terms of integrating online content for credit or, teaching industry aligned skills?
Yeah, I think this started with the new education policy. I think that's what you're referring to, Arjun, where, the NEP started opening up the adoption of online, both into a campus and also a campus launching an online program, which is what Professor Rao and I were starting to talk about before we got into this conversation. So a campus can integrate online, content into what they're teaching as a teaching and learning resource, as an industry micro-credential, etc., up to 40%. I think we are currently working with about 100 odd campuses where anywhere between 10-20% of credits can now be delivered by leveraging online content. Some institutions are also saying, look, if we are launching an online program, then instead of reinventing the wheel where we are creating all content, from ground up, we might leverage some of the existing content from top institutions and then bring in the real expertise from our faculty and our mentors who will focus more time, lesser on teaching and more on the learning part of it, and so on and so forth. So that's largely what we've seen. But I think regulation is fairly clear. It was a little unclear some time back, but regulation is clear and quite facilitative in this area.
Arjun, if I may,
Yes.
there's only listening to Raghav's very concise and comprehensive picture that is presented of the changes and how we are placing our students and universities. There's one thing, I'm a political scientist by background, and we had to do, and an economist at my undergraduate years when I had to do statistics, data, and it came naturally with the curriculum. There is a deep question for me about the role of arts and humanities and social sciences in this changing world. And I thought I should take this opportunity to say, while STEM is emphasizing logical, creative thinking, and students have to have these skills in any discipline they choose, I think the question is, to what degrees are students able to critically examine contemporary issues of local, global, international significance without so much emphasis on data? And, everybody's drifting to that. The importance of AI, machine learning, data. There is a kind of a frenzy among the student population as well, that, if at the end of the day, we've got to get jobs. And these are the only skills that are foremost of importance. We had an open day for parents and prospective students on Saturday. And I can tell you, majority want to do economics because it gives you all those skills, or a lot of demand for STEM subjects. So there is a question, and I think there's a larger conversation to be had about the role of arts and humanities and social sciences in a complex environment, which is transforming itself so rapidly. What is happening to the concept of lifelong learning? The concept is evolving, where opportunities, individuals have to access learning. And in everything that Raghav is saying about the digital economy and so on, skills, in this, individuals have to access learning opportunities in different ways for different purposes at different stages in their lives. But I'm a bit concerned that there's not enough. There's a shift away, a radical shift, if you like, from the arts and humanities, which are the creative subjects. And they're it's a skeptical point. I'm not coming across as a skeptic here, but I'd like to see a good balance rather than just industry-driven particular skills.
And in my personal experience, if I may add, right, and I think you make a very valid point, my son is currently studying computer science at University of British Columbia and taking psychology and Japanese and all of these subjects, to kind of think about that balance. So I completely see what you're saying. My daughter is likely to go to Ashoka and study economics, and so completely see the value.
You see my point. I mean, it's nice to have the skills, but it's also nice. And that's why I think liberal arts is a very comfortable space to be, because you're getting that kind of breadth now, whether you get that in traditional mode of learning, in a straight honest systems. At least we didn't get when I was growing up in the 70s. Economics honors had 24 courses with statistics, and that's it, nothing else. But I think that liberal arts education provides that. I just don't want people to lose sight of the value of arts and humanities that it can offer in terms of the skills that are required, which will complement everything else. Cognitive problem solving.
So, Professor Rao, clearly, you mentioned that because at the end of the day, students want jobs, and then they, that is why they look towards, STEM education, economics. Then how can we address this? I mean, how can we create that environment for the art subject also that you mentioned? And clearly, that's a concern that you've raised.
And here I'd like to draw a comparison with the British system, where I was for 30 years. When I went there, I was in the same mindset. If you did economics, you'll get into banking, or is it for RBI exams or state bank? You had a clear path. You did subjects like history, you would end up in academia or teaching, because you couldn't imagine a historian actually doing anything else. I'm talking about the 1800s. Things have changed, but in Britain, it had changed a long time ago. So you could do classics or Latin from Cambridge or any university and end up in the city of London, earning your first $250,000. It has absolutely no bearing to the main subject that you've done in undergraduate years. Why? Because the kind of teaching and the kind of broad-based learning that one gets whilst majoring in that particular discipline enables you to enter that market of even finance and industry without any difficulty. And that's what we need, much broader-based learning. And that's where, again, I'm emphasizing the value of liberal arts education. At least the first year gives you that foundation for very good skills development, which is necessary. And that's only, I think, way to move forward. And it's heartening to see a lot of even Shiv Nadar is not a liberal arts institution, but it's developing a lot of liberal arts content, which is very good. They're recognizing the importance of that.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Raghav, my last question to you, based on the conversation today, if you would have to sum up that if universities in India are to adapt to these faster changes in this digital world, how is Coursera helping them transform?
I think we've covered some of these, Arjun, but I would summarize, and I think Dr. Rao said this as well, right? The core of what students are learning, whether it be liberal arts, whether it be the sciences, whether it be engineering, whatever, continues to lie with the campus. Those 4 strategic goals that I was talking about, I think, are what many academic leaders, university leaders are focused on: academic excellence, student placements, brand and perception, and then finally growth in enrollments and revenue. I think in all of this, somebody like Coursera can play the complementary role of saying, look, your core is this. If you're missing X, we can bring that because we open the world up to you, right? So you're a computer science student, but your institution does not have great cybersecurity faculty. We can bring high quality cybersecurity content. Or you're looking to work in social media marketing, and we can get Meta, Facebook to teach you social media marketing. So it's about that complementarity. And these 2 kind of trends that are highlighted, right, which is collaboration across universities, where you're not teaching your students what your faculty are teaching, but bringing institutions, either the kind of collaborations that Professor Rao spoke about, or via the Coursera platform, where we can bring in a lot of institutions together. And then industry as an educator. I think some of these are fairly significant themes. I don't think these are flashes in the pan kind of themes, but these are fairly significant themes which are actually changing how higher education is delivered. And then finally, I think some of the innovations, which is whether coach or course builder, I didn't speak about virtual reality in online learning, but it's making the experience very, very immersive, and some of these will mean for more personalized and interactive learning. I was talking to the CHRO of a bank in Singapore this morning, and we were talking about public speaking skills.
Mhm.
And I was showing him this integration of virtual reality into a public speaking course on Coursera, where you can actually come and practice public speaking, and you can say, I'm presenting to a group of 10 people in a boardroom, or I'm presenting to 500 people in an auditorium, and it lets you create a virtual environment and then practice in those environments, and then gives you real-time feedback about various elements of what you're presenting. So it's really taking things to the next level, which I think is quite exciting as well.
Well, right. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, Raghav, for joining us this afternoon. It was clearly an insightful conversation for me as well. That's it from my side in terms of the questions that I had. But if you would like to share some observations, some notes, I open the floor for you, for both of you to share, and we'll then end it formally.
Yeah, thank you for connecting me with Raghav, because I might have to have an offline conversation with him as to how he might be able to help us in Krea, being a new university. But, on a final note, I just want to remind that, of course, evolving needs, expectations of the students as consumers, they're constantly changing. Student demographics is changing, and we've got to go along with it. But in all this, I think we should not forget what the Sustainable SDG Goal 4 commits us to, which is about quality education for all. And it's not just limited to foundation knowledge and skills such as literacy or mathematics, but I emphasize again the importance of how might we continue to keep the importance of arts and humanities subjects and keep students.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you.
I looked up at the clock and it's 5:10, and I was like, 40 minutes has gone by quickly. So, thank you for the conversation. I really enjoyed listening to Professor Rao, and Arjun, thank you for guiding us through and shepherding this conversation. A follow-up conversation later would be wonderful. I'd really look forward to the opportunity, Professor Rao. And thank you, Arjun, for this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.